Something or Other Publishing. Wade Franson is the host of Created in the Image of God, a series that examines the role of religion in society, from messianic returns to the emotive responses transmitted through our culture. Wade fearlessly addresses reality claims from all directions, objectively exploring their compatibility with Holy Scripture. Joining him is Daniel Sanderson, CEO of Planksip, an international philosophy and cultural media outlet, helping emerging thought leaders with personal branding by co-creating organic content. Tonight's episode is Technology Today's Forbidden Fruit, Part 2, with Marco Ciappelli.
Okay, welcome everybody. I want to introduce you to Marco. Marco Ciappelli is a guest that had a bit of a blip, but that's okay. We love him nonetheless. Marco, if anybody recalls, was scheduled to be on the show a few weeks ago. This is his great return. Just coming back and somewhat apologetic. And for the religious people out there, there's somewhat of an understanding of what apologetic means. It's a compatibility story. So that compatibility story of I guess looking at where we're at, and everybody kind of makes mistakes. We're embracing Marco with open arms. So welcome, Marco. It's great to have you virtually in the same room again.
Well, Daniel, it's nice to see you again, and I'm glad that I still had an opportunity to come. Not really back, but for the first time. There was a glitch. Was definitely a glitch, a ghost in the machine. That was mostly my brain. The ghost in the machine. We're not going there right now. Sorry.
We could. It's so tempting. Here. It's calling us. It's calling us. The ghost in the machine, right? Like, what is that? Ghost in the machine. Okay. Well, if you've watched this show before and the audience has tuned in, week out, they understand that there's a little bit of rhythm here between me and you, and that's really for us to talk about your childhood and find out where you grew up. I'm excited to learn a little bit about Italy. Spoiler alert, Marco grew up in Italy, and we're going to learn about what childhood was like growing up in Italy, and a little bit about your parents, siblings, if you have them. Were you thrown into any kind of a religious structure? Tell us what was your childhood like?
It was good. It was a long time ago, long enough, but I remember it. I grew up in Florence, Italy, actually right outside of Florence, a smaller town called Sesta Fiorentino. And yes, I don't have siblings, only child, but a ton of friends. Grew up a little bit outside in the country. So my time in those years, like in the 70s, I was born in 69. There was no computer. There was TV, of course, radio, and a lot of soccer balls and an open space to be outside and play and hurt yourself on a bicycle. So it's good memories. And yeah, and as far as the religious part, being Italian, I tell everyone you have to. It's part of our culture. So you go to catechism, you go to the church, you go to on Sunday, you hang out actually at the church, play soccer. The church where I grew up had a soccer field there, playing ping pong. I still remember that, and all the celebration, and learning basic things that then you arrive to a certain point in your life, and it's not forced on you, at least not in my family. And now that you know a few things, you can move on and make your own conclusion. But it remained part of my culture. I mean, either I go to church or not, it's a part of who I am.
Yeah, we're going to hear something, a concept that's going to resonate with Wade, is this idea of a coercive factor of religion, and Wade's time and time again ringing that bell, saying religion should not be coercive. And I think maybe it's a sign of the maturity of religion. And he also explains how it's very progressive and revelatory, and it might be like an analogy could be like a fine wine. It's actually maturing to a point where cognitively we're more aware, consciously we're more aware, and it's more valuable to society that you come of your own, dare I say, free will. Um, what are your thoughts on that before I ask about the activities of youth?
Well, you mean connected with the church or in general?
Well, just I mean, you've painted a nice picture of your family, not forcing the dogma. So when you strip away the
Right.
dogma, there's something left there
Yeah.
that, as a society and a family, seems to have uh, like a positive, well, has a feedback loop to it.
Yeah, absolutely. As I said, even if maybe I don't practice anymore in terms of going to the church every Sunday, um, it's a piece of culture and knowledge and probably part of who I am. I think it's shaped my personality. So you carry with you what you think it's useful for you, what you agree with, because you don't have to agree on everything, I believe. And I think that's the right approach, in my opinion. So not forcing anyone, but giving the opportunity to to experience that, because there are certain value that I carry now in my later years that I'm sure I developed because of the things that I've heard when I went to church every Sunday, when I do the catechism. And I didn't take it as a box, okay, it's all or nothing, but there are a few things that stay with me and I still share certain value for sure.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a good answer. So I want to take you back. I'm imagining your youth, your childhood, playing with your friends outside, playing soccer,
Hmm.
um, spending a lot of time outdoors. I'm kind of guessing what the answer would be, but do you see a difference between the way kids are now versus, especially with the picture I'm trying to paint is the outdoor activities, the physical activity. Do you see that as different, as
Uh,
it's changed?
I think so. I think there is a lot less freedom for kids to just go outside and say, I'll see you back at sunset during the summer. I think that because society has changed, there is a lot less trust, maybe rightfully so. There is more perceived risk out there. And I don't see kids having that freedom, that the freedom to experience things that we had, or at least that I had. And I think that definitely also has a consequence on how you experience that outside, right? It's maybe you go outside, but you're brought by your parents in at the soccer field, and when you're done, time to come back. Back in my days, we will hop on a bike, and who knows, there was another hour of adventure before you actually come back home. And I
Mm.
think it may be less stimulating for kids nowadays. I don't have kids, so I'm just going with some conversation I had with educators that talked about certain things like this, and then of course the technology. If you want to start going there, it's something that capture the time of kids. We didn't have that growing up. It
No.
wasn't that, right?
No, yeah, you're right. I mean, I think of some of the background noise about creating community, right? I mean, it sounds great, and there's a lot of superficial use of words that have intrinsic meaning. Um, and just as you were explaining that, I thought to myself, well, community was that you had like a place where you grew up, a place where you lived that you felt comfortable letting your children go out and play, and
Absolutely.
your neighbors were, you just lived in a place that you wanted to raise children in.
It's like if you think about your neighbors being the rudder, right? They, even if your parents were not there, I'm pretty sure they know where we were because maybe the neighbor saw us. There was always an eye to know, oh, here those are those kids. They're playing here, they're playing in another place, but they're safe. I mean, there was that community uh, connection that it was very, very. It made me feel safe pretty much all the time.
What about English language? Was that something that you developed in parallel in Italy, or did you learn that later? When did that come?
So English and a second language in general in the 70s and 80s, it wasn't much of a commitment for the educational system. And I remember it was very basic, very, very basic. What brought me to learn the language was two things: love for music, literally translating lyrics of song. Led Zeppelin, Doors. I mean, trying to understand.
Wade's gonna have a whole bunch of okay.
Are we gonna talk about classic rock?
Part of the reason for these is that we kind of like dial Wade into all of these things that he's like,
I'm gonna go there. We're gonna talk about that. Yeah, so that was one thing. And then growing up, when I started be 18, 19, I wanted to travel. So I started to go as soon as I could in other countries in Europe. And growing up in Florence, you had a lot of countries and culture coming to you. It's a very touristic city. So you could literally sit somewhere at a cafe at night in the summer and do not hear a word in Italian. And you will hear people speaking English or speaking French or Spanish or other language. So you kind of want to communicate. And I think I ended up in studying, sociology of communication because I always had this fascination to experience other culture. So that was my thing. But then, of course, when I really, really learned it was when I went to college as a second language. And then, of course, when I moved to the US. But sometimes I have problems speaking in Italian. I need to practice.
Really?
There
lost that, right?
No, I mean, I talk to my parents almost every day, and I do have friends there and some business. But sometimes there is the word that I know exactly what I want to use, and it's in English, and it doesn't exist in Italian, and or vice versa. To be honest, sometimes that happens.
Yeah, there was. I took French immersion when I was growing up, and grade 7 science class where they give the tour of the class, and there's the mortar and the pellier. I don't know. I don't mortar and the pellier. I think of it as a French word, so you just I don't even know the English. I mean, it's not intuitive. The recollection comes in French first. So is it just 2 languages that you speak, or is it more languages?
Yeah, I understand and used to speak pretty well Spanish, but I didn't practice enough. So, and it comes quite easy because you're Italian. We have a jokes where we say you just add an S at the end of the word and you're speaking Spanish. It's not true, but I can easily. I mean, as an Italian, you can easily understand unless the language is very fast. In that case, if the speaker is fast, then you have an issue. But yeah,
the only thing I can speak in Spanish is no mas tequila, so that's
no mas tequila.
That's kept me pretty safe. Well, anyway, so we're at the point in the show. I'm sure you guys will talk about this. Wade's got several languages under his belt. That's maybe one thing that he'll jump on. If not, you guys will just roll up your sleeves and jump right into technology. There's a lot to talk about technology. And we were talking off air about the forbidden fruit and the nuance of that perspective. Wade briefed you a little bit on it. I think there is some common ground there. So everybody should be interested. It's going to be a very stimulating conversation. What I want to remind the audience to do right now is put your comments into the comment section. We're going to be giving a book away, but I don't think it's Marco's book. I'm not actually sure which book it is that we're going to be giving away. Anyways, put the comments in. Best comment wins something, and we always deliver on that. As long as the guests send their information in and they live within the continental U.S., we're good to honor that. So comments, please, in the description, and we will be right back after this commercial break with Marco and Wade.
Hey there, Marco. Before we jump into anything, I got to make a comment about that little ad. It's I think it's a couple of years old now, and the reason we played that ad is that the book we're giving away tonight is actually volume 1 of 25 servings of soup, because volume 1 just won the National Association of Book Entrepreneurs Award for anthologies. And there's a relaunch of that book, volume 1, because of that award, with a press release, and the authors are excited about it, and they're getting engaged to try to turn this book into a revised bestseller. As a result, I think it became a bestseller when it came out a few years ago. So that's the book we're giving away to the audience, is 25 Servings of Soup, volume 1. And there's a tiny bit of a segue there. And hang on, I'll put the QR code in here, because some people may feel that either they're shy and they don't want to comment to win this book, or they want to just go out and buy the book because they're so excited by the ad and my talking about it and the fact that it won an award. You can use that QR code with your smartphone, and it'll take you right to the place where you can buy it. But the segue to our talk about technology is that just a couple of years ago, that ad it's dated, right? Now we use more sophisticated tools in making those ads. And of course, we always have voiceovers using AI voices, which was just more expensive to make those ads with voiceovers back then. The standards have been raised. The moats have come down. AI has swarmed over us. Let's just jump into that topic. And let me do so by asking you, how did you make that transition from young boy in Italy looking for another hour of adventure on your bike before coming home for dinner to your religious family to becoming an expert and somewhat of a celebrated pundit in the area of technology and AI?
It's a long story, but I'll make it short. So I had always a big passion for advertisement. As a creative source. When I was a little kid, I used to watch this thing in Italy called Carosello, and it was like long advertisement, and kids will go to bed after Carosello. You had to watch it. And they were just long advertisement, but very well done, very creative. And I had this game that I used to do with my dad.
Was that the Italian version of the Super Bowl halftime commercials?
Pretty much, yes. Yeah. Kind of like that. But it was very much was first the story, and then they would tell you who was sponsoring the story. So the game for me was to guess who was the brand. So I developed a love for branding there. So fast forward, I wanted to be a creative person. I started writing ads for radio and so on. And there wasn't not a school at the time for that, not a college that would say, okay, go here and you are a marketing person. It was either business or sociology, psychology. So I went for political science with the specialization in sociology communication, where I fall in love with mass media. So I did my advertising career, and when social media came up, mass media, social media, I was like, we are up to something here, because now it's not just about a one-way communication, it's a two-way communication. It's intriguing, data, click, measurement, and all that kind of stuff. So I kind of start getting into that, to the point that then I met the person that I co-founded the magazine, that is an expert in cybersecurity. So short story, I start putting back my sociology hat on it and start seeing how cybersecurity and technology was affecting society and vice versa. And I have a lot of fun doing that. I'm that weird. So my podcast, I talk about all this thing. And usually there's not an answer. I just make people think. That's what I like to do. I say, if I make people think, I did a good episode.
Well, and that's another reason why we wanted you on here, because we like to make people think. Dan alluded to the fact that this is a religious show, and I do talk a lot about how religion must inspire and never coerce. And so we want to make sure that people are thinking and evaluating their perspective on life, their Weltanschauung, to throw a word there in from German. I'm not sure if there's an Italian version of that, their worldview. But I want to take a half step back and talk about your comment about carousel. And you see, I was a child in Sweden, 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. I grew up, well, I was born in Canada, then I was in America. And in 4th grade, I was unceremoniously plopped into a family in Sweden where the entire nation spoke a different language than me, and try as I might, I could not get them to change. So I had to change, and I had to learn Swedish, and I had to learn, sort of to adapt as a Swedish kid. And one of the things that immediately struck me was they did have TV. They had, I think, 2 channels at the time, TV, yeah. TV4, TV1 and TV2, and they were both government sponsored, and there was no advertising. No advertising allowed on those TVs, because it was basically deemed not, positive. Sweden was a socialist country, but leaning more in the direction of heavy socialism, right? Than, today's sort of hybrid socialism. And they felt that it was not advantageous for their society, and especially for their children. And that's the point I wanted to make, especially for their children to have advertising. Whereas in America, you had entire, millions, billions of dollars spent creating shows, entertainment that was basically one big advertisement, one big marketing vehicle. And I'm going to go somewhat negative here, to turn the child in the family into a 5th column, undermining the economic health and viability of the family, because of the incessant demands that kid had to buy all the stuff that, before you had any psychological defense mechanisms whatsoever, you sat there open-eyed and often open-mouthed with your jaw hanging open, watching what was used to be called the boob tube. Watching, not because of that other, but boob meaning you were a boob, you were a dummy. Right? It turned you into a dummy. It turned you into a vegetable, because you sat there like a zombie, just drinking it in. And these very sophisticated messages designed for children. And again, I'll go very dark here for a moment, to rip a hole in their heart and make them feel that they weren't worthy or weren't happy until they obtained that product that was dangled in front of them in such a way to make them feel lacking, wanting that thing. The original meaning of the word want is to lack. If you wanted something, that means you didn't have it, right? Old stories would say, they wanted for meat that winter because they had hadn't been able to lay in any salted bacon or whatever, right? So, the desires were really stoked in the children. So Swedish TV didn't allow that. And I find it fascinating that your experience was to have these pleasant stories where you got to use a little mental energy to guess who was behind it and sponsoring. It's kind of like middle ground between this evil version I described in America and this utopian idea in Sweden to not have any advertising at all. Maybe the Italian version was the middle ground. I don't know. Having said all that, the reason I'm bringing this all up is, the title of today's show is Technology the Forbidden Fruit? And that may be a good place to start, right? Because, the TV and technology and the commerce-driven rise of technology, right? We're now getting at the root and core of our modern society and what later evolved into, the topic for tonight. I've been long-winded now. I'll let you talk for a while and just react to all that.
So one side, I'm like, oh my God, you changed the topic of me. Now we're talking about advertising, and I'm okay with that too, of course.
Right.
But it is all connected. You're absolutely right. When technology has empower to own, as somebody say, you want to go dark, I can go dark. Somebody's piece of their mind when they only focus on, if I get that, my life is going to be fulfilled. Then you get that and it's not. Then there is one more thing that you need to go. And that's capitalism for you, right? So, but I think with that, now we are fast forward from radio to billboards to TV and advertising on magazine to something way more pervasive. Social media, you got Siri, Alexa, whatever you want to call it, that listen eventually through the microphone to your voice. You got algorithm that feed you exactly what you want. They know what you want. They know what is your weakest point, and they're going to get you to probably buy even more. So, and I'm staying at a higher level here, like that data collection, privacy, and all of that. It's another can that we can open, but it's what you do with technology. It's not all bad, but this is definitely not a good thing.
Well, and to continue on that theme, what we've seen is the advancement of technology has put the human being into situations that are new and for which we may not have evolved appropriate, defense mechanisms, to use the example of the child who sits there in front of the television. But not just the child societal defense mechanisms, because just like smoking took over, right, before anybody knew that it would kill you. And then it took, decades to teach people in Western society that it's killing you, and then to get the behavior changed. And in the meantime, it spread to other nations around the world. Well, the TV became a babysitter as the industrial age, matured and women went into the workforce, and child care system. So Sweden also had a very advanced child care system early on because of their belief that, the equality of men and women should have equal opportunity out in the workplace. And in order for that to be possible, there needed to be some way to care for the children, because traditionally women had that role, certainly in the early years, breastfeeding and whatever, and the pregnancy. And so biologically, not to get into the subject of biologically what is a woman, but that's yet another example of how fast things are progressing. And we as a species are being challenged to keep up and stay ahead of things like smoking is a good analogy here, that end up killing us, that end up doing massive pervasive damage. And technology advances and science doesn't, the meta sciences don't keep up with the hard sciences that allow the technology development. And the human being and the family and the structure of society is reeling in the wake of this technology and reacting to it.
Well, I mean, look back at the story I was telling Daniel, right? I'm a kid. I'm 14 years old. I get the first Walkman. Like I love this old analog thing. I have a show that we compare things, and that was so cool. That is not 100 years ago. That
and
is
a Game Boy, a Walkman,
the Game
and a Game
Boy, the Walkman, and a bunch of things. And now think about we look at our smartphone. I mean, the first smartphone came out in 2006, 2007. It seems like we always had it. Now there is native kids that have it, and we're like, we can't go anywhere without it. It's like I'm naked. What am I going to do without it? But it wasn't that long ago. So the thing we need to
let's stop on that for a moment, because that's the perfect example. So it came out in 2006, which was 17 years ago, right? 17 years ago, it didn't exist. Now we have a 15-year-old and we have a 12-year-old. And to your point, that thing is glued to them. And for years now, you've seen, and Elon Musk talks about it already being a cyborg component, because it's always with us. It's like it's built into us, and we kind of can't function without it. We are already enabled by this. I can't find my way anywhere or my way home without this thing. And I always had that weakness, but the speed and the expectations of what I'm supposed to accomplish, I cannot function in my world without this. And these kids grow up knowing that, but as a society, when those kids were born, the thing didn't even exist. And now it is practically grafted onto their body. And certainly they behave as though it is. And we have no clue what this means in terms of how these kids that grew up this way, what they're going to be like as adults. I mean, maybe it's all good. Maybe it's empowering. Maybe it makes them better. Or maybe they will have severe neurological or psychological damage. We don't know, really. We can guesstimate. We can have our hypotheses. Science can research it. But whatever science there might be on this, I would guess it's inconclusive.
Probably. But there is also the beauty of, now I don't know about 12 years or kids. I heard a story where there is kids that are 5 years old that have a phone. I don't think that's,
well, of course. I'm just saying my kids are 12 and 15, and it's a constant daily battle to manage how much time we allow as parents, because we don't really know. And between my wife and I, we have slight differences of opinion. And anyway.
Yeah, but again, it's what you do with it, right? Now, the kids is maybe a little bit different, but I'm like, we have this entire library of Alexandria. Now with AI, you can do a lot of things. You have the GPS, you have who knows what. I'm just waiting for the day it's going to fly in my hands when I call it, kind of like Harry Potter, right? But what do we do with that is up to us. And it's up to the parents and the teacher, the educators, to educate the kids and say, look, yeah, you can have fun with it, but also you can do a lot of really good things. And I often ask myself, who is educating the educator? I see a gap in going through that fast forwarding of technology from the analog to the digital, where I feel like there's been a large chunk of the population that missed the manual, given that it doesn't come anymore with a manual like stuff used to come. And so they're like, oh, my kids know my phone, the phone better than me. Well, because they have a brain, they use it. But you can't just keep that. You can't just, oh, here's a car, go. No, you get a license, you learn how to drive it, you respect rules, and then you have that freedom. So, I mean, it's a simplistic metaphor or parallel, but we are going into this technology.
It's a good one. It's a good one, but I bet if you did a survey, 9 out of 10 families, they don't put rules and guardrails and boundaries. Well, maybe some rules, boundaries, and guardrails, but the big debate probably between my wife and I is, she will tend to say, we gave them, and here's a comment which I think fits in with this. No, the little kids have an iPad, not a cell phone. Fair enough. Good point.
Yep.
The point being that my wife would say, we gave them access to the technology too early, but you cannot unopen Pandora's box. That's what she's saying. We opened Pandora's box and we could not shut it again. And we probably, of all families, tried very hard to set those rules, boundaries, guidelines, and manage it. Two very active parents. But, you know, the single mom, you know, she's going to naturally use it the way my parents used the TV, as a babysitter, right? And as a, you know, you can imagine that they're using it for good purposes, and sometimes they are. But getting back to the advertisers who spend millions and billions of dollars to sell their products, that may even be considered by most to be a neutral situation, you know, just trying to show the kids what's out there. Well, there are forces that are somewhat more nefarious even than advertising, that we all know lurk right behind that interface. And you're in the cybersecurity world, in which we're trying to protect against all kinds of dangers and threats. So let's talk about those dangers and threats for a moment that you, in your day job, what are some of the threats that you've worked on and tried to counteract?
Well, okay, so I'm not the technical guy, like I'm not the cybersecurity professional. I do talk to a lot of them. I look more at, you know, how it integrates in the business, right, as a value, and not the department of no, as they like to call it, and how cybersecurity is affecting our life in terms of...
All right, my daughter's cat, it wants to get on the action here. This is Licorice.
There you go.
She'll settle down here in my lap in a minute.
That's awesome.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. But when you're talking business B2B, it's one story. You're talking about, you know, firewalls. You're talking about AI to protect the perimeters and all that kind of stuff. Working from home. What interests me is how we make ourselves as a society vulnerable to that. Social engineering, scams, password, people that get your credit and take advantage and your social security number and open an account with that. So there is an entire, again, you said Pandora's box that can be. And one problem that we see a lot during our conversation, despite many association organizations that are there to do something about it, like labeling IoT devices, cameras, stuff that you put in your kid's bedroom just to monitor.
IoT, the Internet of Things, right?
For Internet of Things, exactly. That they're just not controlled. They're not like FDA approved, let's say, and there is a lot of risk connected to that. And people just, it's a little bit too much for people to worry about that, right? You want to go to the store and buy something, know that somebody has certified that thing for you. Like if you go buy a fridge, you're not going to be worried that, what kind of fridge am I buying? You know that it's been approved for something. And with the IoT devices, it's a completely different thing. So I go back to education, right? Technology comes with a lot of things that are positive in our life. I'm going to go to AI, huge things for the healthcare system, for example, helping medical to analyze results, scans. That, I mean, there are certain things that AI can do very, very well. But then with that, you can connect again with the cybersecurity, and with AI comes a lot of power for cyber criminals to carve even worse and more nefarious way to enter into your life, into the company, and breaches and all of that. So again, with a lot of power comes a lot of responsibilities.
Well, absolutely. That's a good place to quickly jump to a second quick commercial break here. This is regarding an anthology that has been launched by Something or Other Publishing around this topic of AI called Artificial Morality. When we come back, we'll dive deeper into this topic. We'll pick up right where we left off. And I hope that everyone will stay tuned and begin thinking about those comments you want to make in order to be the lucky winner of that volume of short stories. We'll be right back.
Artificial morality. The future of AI is rapidly changing, and with it, the future of humanity. How will we approach this transformative technology? Will we make ethical decisions that shape a bright future for all? Or will we be swayed by greed and self-interest? The world's great spiritual teachings offer a path forward, a way to use the tools we create for the betterment of humanity. They remind us that we are all created in the image of God and that our technological advancements must reflect this spiritual reality. In Artificial Morality, Navigating the Ethics of AI with Spiritual Teachings, we present a vision of hope where technology serves humanity and not the other way around. Join us as we explore this critical topic through stories of inspiration and hope. To submit your own tale of navigating the ethics of AI and become a part of this groundbreaking anthology, simply email us at info@supellc.com.
So what that is asking is if you'd like to make a contribution to this topic, reach out. Perhaps you've got an idea for a short article or an essay on this topic. And of course, the world's religions do provide moral guidance that will shape us. I'm going to circle back to what we've been talking about, and then we're going to segue into a new aspect of this discussion. Let me quickly try to share my screen here. Here's a little meme that is on Facebook. And hang on, there we go. So hopefully everybody will be able to see this here. So on the left hand, you've got people lining up for pills and surgery. And on the right hand, you have all the people lining up for lifestyle changes in order to improve their health. And the reason I thought I would share this for a moment is, yes, technology offers all these advancements, but going back to the marketing and the advertising and selling us that there's a quick fix and a quick solution, just buy this thing, just get this pill, just have this surgery, and all your problems will be solved. Obviously, this is humor. It overemphasizes the point. Clearly, there's nothing wrong entirely with pills and surgery. But if we are being led to have it be this one-sided, right, I would submit that that's a problem. And is that an inevitable result of these technological advancements? You know, does everyone need to have a dishwasher, and then eventually, you know, we have climate change because every family has to have 100 efficiency, you know, work-saving devices in their home? Does everyone have to be sold that pills and surgery are the answer, and they shouldn't, you know, try to eat healthy food and exercise?
It's a big question. I'm going to go to the AI example, right? The debate on AI. So a generative AI in particular, like the Chat GPT and all of those that everybody's talking about it. The writers in the movie industry, actors, they went on strike for a long time about that. There is privacy, personal intellectual property, and a lot of other things. And so if you use it as the solution to everything, if those are the easy button, like technology in general, we have a problem, a big problem, because we're just gonna dumb ourselves down and we're not able to, you know, on the creative aspect of things, for example. But I mean, I wouldn't trust, and I wouldn't want anybody to trust AI to make decision on somebody's life, or if they get a mortgage or not, or if they're gonna get insurance or not. So, but in terms of not using it as the easy button because it's going to do everything for us, but actually use it as a tool maybe to evolve even more, then I'm for that. So that little meme that you showed, it showed me that. most of the people, they want the easy button. And the truth is, there are things that can help, but you got to do a little bit of work.
Right. Well, we talked a little bit before the show. The main heading is technology the new forbidden fruit? And I shared my perspective that the historical religious view is, the fall of humankind in the Garden of Eden. They ate that forbidden fruit. It was all downhill ever since, and we've been trying to recover from that original sin ever since. My view is a little different because the Apostle Paul later says that strong meat, which he's advising this weak church, this church full of people who are being people, right? You mentioned that people tend to want the easy button, and we do. People who have failed to advance, failed to mature, failed to evolve will make rookie mistakes. And the Apostle Paul is calling out this entire church of making all these rookie mistakes. And he says strong meat, which would be healthful, protein will help you build strong muscles. Strong meat is for those who, by reason of use, have exercised their senses to discern good and evil. So he evokes the tree of the knowledge of good and evil in a different context and says, you have access to it. You need to use it. You need to use it in such a way that you discern good and evil, that you make good choices. So in that sense, AI certainly can deliver more specific information pre-digested that would have taken us longer in the past to gather. I personally have used it that way. I do use AI myself in my work, in my writing, and I find that AI lies to me. AI delivers the same lies that others are putting out there. It digests the lies of others, and in some cases it spits them back. It even makes up its own lies, right? I've asked it to provide citations to support its argument. I'll say, give me the argument for this proposition with citations. And this is ChatGPT. It will deliver those citations, and I will say, I don't find that, and it will give me a vague citation. I'll say, please show me exactly where it is in the book. And after 3 or 4 rounds of this, AI will admit, ChatGPT will admit, I'm sorry, that citation does not actually exist. Mm-hmm. So ChatGPT made it up. I don't think that it is actually citing a false citation that somebody else used. It's giving a shortcut and saying something like this is what this book is saying. But if you're being very specific and particular, no, that is not what the book said. That author did not say that. And if I'm going to cite it, I had better get it right. Mm-hmm. So this is fascinating to me. What does that tell us? What does all that tell us?
Well, I wrote I have a newsletter, and I think about this situation here, and I always jump to the point that AI is human. It's a mirror of our humanity. So that may get into the forbidden fruit as well. But because if I'm not wrong, the tree of knowledge doesn't necessarily give you wisdom. And I think there is a big difference between knowledge and wisdom, right? So we got the technology, but it doesn't mean that the technology, again, is the answer of its own. We need to use our own brain, our own judgment, and do that. And to go back to, we need to think that all AI is pre-trained, right? Generative pre-trained transformer is pre-trained on a large amount of database of everything that was in the internet, everything digital, books, and all of that. So it didn't just rain from the sky, wasn't just delivered to us. It's actually a reflection of 100 years, or maybe less, actually, because we had to have stuff digitalized. Of course, Shakespeare is digital as well, but like not exactly everything of our culture. And if there are biases in there, if there are things that are not real, if it's really mimicking our behavior, hallucination, which is what they're called when it lies to you, are to be expected, which makes it even more human and maybe even more scary.
I like that. I like that
want to go
better. It's not lying,
dystopian.
it's hallucinating.
That's what they
Right.
call it. Yeah, it's hallucination.
Yeah.
We call it like that. So it's really only human after all.
So
crazy.
are we getting to the point where we start diagnosing the specific mental illness that this AI has?
Maybe it's probably connected to our culture as well. You know, it really is that.
So how would you define the difference between knowledge and wisdom?
I think knowledge is, I would define it like, it's kind of like technology. One thing is like, I have all this information. Great. I just went to the market and I bought 3 bags full of knowledge. I'm going to be Italian here. Now I have to go home and cook a meal.
Yep.
Just come up with this. Sorry if you guys don't like it, but now I
well,
need
no, that's
to know.
great. And you chose, and you had good knowledge. You chose the cheaper ingredient, but it's not an ingredient that you need for that dish.
Yeah, maybe the wisdom is the experience, is the judgment of now what do you do with that knowledge? What do you do with this unbelievable technology that we have? What do we do with this phone? Do we just play and all day a video game and then do on Facebook, or are we actually doing something constructive? Like, I love artificial intelligence. Like you do. I use it for writing, but no way that I'm going to just take what the output is and use it.
Right.
No.
Right. Exactly.
No.
Exactly. Well, we might use a good editor. I mean, I personally will have it sometimes rewrite things multiple times, and then I will pick, pieces here and there and put it together. And by the time I'm done, it's basically a research tool, right?
Is.
But it's a powerful, quick research tool. But then I have to go back and make sure that it's not hallucinating, because I don't want to publish a hallucination.
Yeah, but it's great for tunnel task, right? Summarizing. It can learn legal languages in no time, but then are you going to go with that contract without checking it? No, but it's really good at that kind of stuff. Exactly. I am still hopeful for humanity because I don't see it to be creative. I mean, it's still putting randomly word one after another. So I wouldn't even call it artificial intelligence. And I make fun of this with a lot of people that are actually expert, like the passing the Turing test, for example. I think it's passing it already, right? But intelligence, we could try to define that as well. But if it is about being creative, like, it's not. It's just mimicking what is learned. It's a parrot. It's just that sometimes they come out with really great answers.
Yeah, the Turing test, that's interesting that you bring that up, which is a test to determine whether or not it has real intelligence, right?
If it sounds like a human, right? That was the idea back in the day.
If another human might be convinced that it's human, is that?
Yep. My
concern, and the concern of others, might be whether or not it passes Isaac Asimov's 6 basic laws of robotics, right? If you know what I'm referring to.
Yeah.
To prevent robots from ever harming mankind.
There were 3, I think there were 6. No, it was 3 plus 3. It's something like that. I don't remember, but yeah. And that's
we could ask ChatGPT to tell us how many there are.
Come on, do you ever try to put ChatGPT in a corner and kind of manipulate?
Well, yes, when it lies to me, I mean, when it hallucinates, yes.
Yeah.
And I call it out.
Yeah.
and I try to get it to admit that it lied to me, and it won't.
No. Eventually.
It will weasel out of it, which gets to my next question, right? It's being very human. It will weasel out of having done wrong. It will justify its behavior. And so my question is this. You mentioned earlier that it can function as a mirror. right? It mirrors back what humanity is like, what humanity is thinking, what humanity is writing, what humanity is saying, what humanity is doing. Can this be a useful mirror to help us correct our behavior? It's kind of like one of the great benefits of having kids is, where did he hear that? Why is he talking that way? Well, and then the husband and wife, point the finger. He's like you. No, he's like you, right? Because we don't want that behavior, but that behavior is being picked up because we're behaving that way. And we don't like it mirrored back at us. Do we have some hope of AI serving that function of mirroring back some things that we might systemically and as a society and as a species realize we need to change?
I personally think it's doing exactly that. I had this conversation with Daniel once. We never talked about ethics and philosophy as much as we're doing nowadays, trying to put guardrails to AI and really understanding what it can be done, what it cannot be done, just the definition of ethics. And my ethics may be different than yours or someone else. There is not a general agreed upon definition of what is ethical or not. And you may disagree with me, but by looking at what AI is doing, the output.
Well, I'm intrigued. I'm immediately wanting to go and ask ChatGPT whether or not the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is ethical.
Who knows what it's going to come out with? I'm hoping so. But I'm going to go and ask what is ethics. What's the definition of ethics to it? And it's going to probably be very polite and political about it and not really give me an answer, right? But to finish the answer to your question, I think is a very important moment for us to look inside and realize, where are we going with this? And I think it was one of the things we wanted to talk about. Is it boom, or is it damning us, and is it catastrophe, or is it hope? It's dystopia, utopia. It's up to us. So it's a very important moment right now to reflect on what we've done and what we can do.
Well, and I'm gonna punt that question out to the audience right now, because too many of them are just listening to you and I, fascinated, unable to stop for a moment to throw a comment in the chat. So let's put that question out to the audience. Is AI a net plus or a net negative? And while they're reflecting on that, we're going to go to another quick commercial break. And when we come back, we'll look at some of those comments. We'll begin to talk about more about technology being the forbidden fruit, or AI being the forbidden fruit. Don't go anywhere. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Your story has the power to start a movement. Journalism is more than a tool for broadcasting news. It's an important way of fostering meaningful cultural relationships that create tangible change in our society. With our anthology Cultural Journalism, you can now do your part and make your mark. From expert writers to passionate amateur, everyone has a story to tell. Our aim is to promote equality, empathy, and create a safe space for different perspectives and interpretations of the world around us. Come join us today and break free from the toxic news cycle by submitting your story to Cultural Journalism at info@soupllc.com.
Well, there's another opportunity for the audience to get involved, submit your contributions to the Cultural Journalism Anthology, one of several anthologies that we're working on. So we are back now with Marco Ciappelli talking about, is AI the forbidden fruit? And before we went to commercial break, we invited the audience to answer the question, is it a net benefit or a net negative to humanity, AI? Here's a comment from Fuad. It is a net, period. It will be positive if used to promote society and will be negative when used to put people down. In other words, it's a tool and it depends on how we use it, is I think what Fuad is saying in a much more literary way. And I really love your comment there, Fuad. So, Marco, do you agree?
Yeah, I mean that's what we've been talking about. It's a tool. It's not the solution. It's not. I don't see it as negative. I don't see it as positive. I mean, but if I have to run a sum right now with the positive and the negative, right now I think there is more hope for positive. I mean, if you look at what has been done in healthcare, if you look at, it could be that paradox of the environment where technology caused all the problem with the environment, and it may actually now technology be the answer to that, may fast forward certain things in the renewable energy, for example. Again, healthcare, it can help in education. It can help in educating kids where it's not reachable, right? I mean, it can do a lot of things. But again, we really need to be careful. And the fact that the European community just 3 days ago passed the AI Act, I think is a very important thing, and the US is probably very close to do the same.
What were some of the components about that act?
So I haven't
the general
read
direction and tone of it.
The general direction is that the train left the station. There is no going back. So we need to be sure that
Pandora's box has been opened.
Yeah, we need to be sure that it stays on track. And so one thing that they do, they classify AI up to like 3 different levels of what the kind of damage may do, right? So there is the privacy, Europe is very strong on privacy. There is the use in medical device and of course weapons and all that kind of stuff, to the point where it goes to a second level. So if things are made in Europe, they need to be made and done in a certain way. They need to have cybersecurity included with that. But the thing I think why it makes people very uncomfortable is because, I don't know if you read kind of books of like Max Tegmark on Life 4.0 and all this scenario when AI becomes sentient and it become a general AI. It's because there is not a plug. How do you unplug it if it goes wrong when it's connected to the internet?
And EMP.
Yeah,
you can't.
The washer machine is leaking. I'm just going to go for the plug. You can't really do that with AI. So,
yeah. Well, the point is, it's so integrated that the damage of trying to stop it, right? It's like, well, anyway, I won't go there. I'm going to instead go to a different comment from Susan Thompson here. Her view is that it's negative. She says it may be wrong, but it's main writing. She may have used a verbal cue, right? Right. She meant man-made. I wonder if she was using Siri to compose that comment, right? Well, this is a glass half empty answer, right? Sure. It's funny. I just said Siri, and my phone is now talking to me.
There you go.
Right. Well,
unplug it.
Talking about dark side and unplugging, we were talking to somebody who's on her way to China, and she says, you can't have your phone anywhere near you in China. She's terrified of it. Her children are over there, and she was in China for years. But the pervasive use of technology for surveillance is one that many people would consider to be very negative. And maybe that's what Susan is getting at here by it being man-made and therefore negative. Your reaction to that?
Well, I don't know. We can go into, we're not perfect. So if it's human as it is, and we discussed before, it has our imperfections, and so I can see that it's negative and man-made, but it can also go on the other way and say everything we're using, it's man-made. I mean, our tools, our books, writing, everything, even the language is man-made. So that's good.
Visually, the audience is seeing right above your head to the right this little logo that says "Created in the Image of God," right? And so, I would say the basic bias of this show is glass half full, right? It may be man-made, but man was made in the image of God, and our higher nature, our aspirations, our spirit-led, for the religious among us, efforts are net positive. One has to believe that, because there's these memes that says, I'm good just the way I am because God doesn't make mistakes, right? So that's a glass half full view of that. So yeah, it's man-made, but we are God-made, according to that view.
Yeah.
Here's another comment.
I know that logo.
When the use of AI becomes the norm in society, how does the concept of temptation get factored into the equation? If one isn't tempted but at risk of getting left behind, is it still forbidden?
That's pretty cryptic.
Well, I'm thinking he's looking at it, the forbidden fruit, right? We were tempted by the forbidden fruit.
Yeah.
And so somebody's saying, well, I'm not tempted by it, and I wouldn't use it for the wrong reasons, but I have to use it to keep up. But risk of being left behind in what way, right? Are you trying to keep up with the Joneses? Is that a positive? I mean,
no, I don't think that's the meaning. It's more of, I think it's something that you mentioned before start recording. Was it inevitable part of our humanity to actually get that forbidden fruit, steal that fire like Prometheus, or open the Pandora's box, because we are supposed to experiment and do things? I like it to think that way, and I think that it's like, okay, I could live in bliss if I have a choice, but do I want? I don't think we were maybe meant to do that. I don't know. Somebody may agree. I'd like to see a comment about that.
Well, we're going to actually bring in now, I'm going to give fair warning to Dan sitting in the back studio listening.
The philosopher.
Right. We're going to bring in the philosopher and the ethicist and pose that question of him. Were we destined to pick the forbidden fruit? Was it God's intent all along that we take that path? I hope he's listening. I see him not giving me any indication as to whether he's listening to this or not. Oh, there we go. So I'm going to bring him in now. I didn't want to just bring you in visually here, Dan, and have you say, what? So Dan, question posed to you. Did God intend us in that story to eat of the forbidden fruit? And, whether or not you believe in God, whether you not believe the story, what would your opinion be on that?
Well, the preface says it doesn't matter, my opinion, actually. That kind of informs everything I'm about to say. The idea is that we can all agree on ethics, and ultimately it's a meditation on our ability to distinguish right from wrong, good from evil. As we grow and mature, we might try and redefine good and evil. We might think that we've superseded or distanced ourselves to say there's something more than good and evil, but we can't negate goodness. And is it relativistic? Yeah, it is. Is it a compass that moves us in that particular direction? Yeah. So it's not complete chaos. We're a social species that has, for the sake of the point, we have an intuition as to what is good. And we all know this moral imperative of what is good. I think it's really worthwhile to constantly separate technology from ethics. Technology goes back to the very first rock or hammer or anything that's used as a tool to accomplish something. Now, the wisdom in society is exactly what Marco was talking about with Prometheus. This is why Zeus nailed him to a mountaintop and had a bird peck out his liver or whatever it was, right? For all eternity. He's like, Zeus is like, hey, I'm the all-seeing God. I'm the most powerful God on Olympus, who eventually became subservient to the monotheistic God, right? And disappeared, and he's now just a myth. But at that particular time, there was no one greater. And he's like, damn, this guy came and gave these naked apes, gave them technology. They're fine running around like, little chickens or apes or whatever, right? Like mindless little automatons. And now all of a sudden they have the possession of fire, and they have the possession of anything else that can be considered technology. So,
well, to be clear, what they were really given was the capability to create fire, the capability to create tools, the capability to create technology. So you know what I'm saying? In other words, it was an intrinsic ability that they were given. They moved up an evolutionary rung, and they now had that capability. It wasn't that they were given a computer. They were given the ability to make a computer.
I think if we teased on that string a little bit more, I'd probably come right in line. I think it's almost, to me, what came first. I don't know. It's discovering fire and being able to harness it. I was watching somebody recently that talked about the mushroom kingdom, and that one of the first carriers of fire in human prehistory was actually something like a mushroom sack. And so the mushroom sack actually allows to carry embers inside the mushroom sack. And one of the oldest discovered remains of a human actually had this on his right side next to his flint, and then next to his hammer. It is very prized possession for somebody, right, as a wanderer and stuff. And so
right, but that human had to figure out to take that mushroom sack with him, and to have a purpose for doing so, versus the other animals. I mean, if you watch Disney's Bambi, when fire happens, everyone runs.
Exactly.
They all run from it.
Yeah.
And somebody has to say, no, I can harness this. I can control it.
Yeah, and the imagination just opens up to say, oh, what can I do with this? Right. And I think sometimes we forget that the greatest and the most significant superpower or supercomputer really is between each individual's two ears. It's still the most incredible computer on the planet, right? And there's 8.9 billion of them. So
yeah, what does it take to deliver? This is a question for you, Marco. What does it take to deliver Chat GPT? What's behind it? How many? What's the infrastructure behind Chat GPT? It's like it's almost immeasurable, right? And it's almost not quantifiable.
I'm not a computer scientist, but if you want to know something scary that I heard, is that apparently the new Bard, which is the Google artificial intelligence that run on Gemini, is supposed to have 5 times the powers of ChatGPT 4.
Yeah, I alternate between them,
which for me is like a comparison between a lot and a lot.
But they behave differently, right? Don't they behave differently? Have you noticed that?
No, but in terms of what I mean, the old layer architecture is different.
Right.
But without going into that technology part, the point is that we could have not done. I mean, AI has been, again, we go back to Alan Turing, right? That's in the 50s, late 40s. During the war, it helped to decipher the Enigma machine. he was one of the first one to talk about artificial intelligence, and it was theoretical, like it was still theoretical in the 60s, probably because we didn't have the computational power to do that. So right now, with that power going more and more,
it's a lot.
it's a
Well,
lot,
but
a
my
lot,
point is
a lot.
when Dan was talking about the supercomputer, I'm not. I mean, I have a high opinion of myself, relatively, but somebody was calling me a scholar this morning, and I was vehemently telling this person, don't ever call me a scholar, because I am not. And a real scholar would make mincemeat out of me in any discussion on any topic, because I'm not a scholar. I don't have the discipline. I don't consider myself to be a scholar. I might have, I don't know, above average intelligence. I've applied myself in some ways, in other ways not. In many ways, I'm just an ordinary average human being, hopefully in good ways. My point is, I can easily notice that Chat GPT is hallucinating and back Chat GP into a corner on its hallucinations, despite the a lot, and all the minds. And it's because of this supercomputer that we all have. What
Because
we have here,
you have reason, and ChatGPT doesn't. It's still a probability.
God-given. That's religious's big claim. They stake the claim on reason right there. That's pretty remarkable.
But Wade, can I say something? It goes back to when we were making the difference between, and you asked me that, between knowledge and wisdom.
Yep.
We're back there, right?
Yep.
I mean, here's fire. Now what you do with it? Burn everything, or I cook meat and I develop another kind of technology with it. Yep. That's intelligence, right? Applying knowledge to build something else, and that's what we need to have right now. Like, we're given this technology, we better use it wisely.
There's also another interesting one that we haven't been able to resolve. It's called the traveling salesman problem, and it's a computer program that's part of the Millennium Project. I think there's still $1 million up for grabs if anybody can solve it. Basically, it's to check that. I think they take the map of the continental U.S. and they put all the major cities in the United States and say what's the most efficient pathway to go to each city, right? And as humans, we have an ability to just go and tackle the problem and just figure it out almost intuitively, almost like on blind autopilot. And yet a computer will keep running through series after series after series, and to the point that it's so inefficient. And it's just remarkable. Like, there's certain things that right now, even computers there's certain things that computers are just absolutely blow us away on. But then there's other things like Wade's talking about, Marco's talking about, that we're still, we're highly evolved for threat detection, risk detection. I think one of the things that's interesting about the Turing test is that if you're put in front of kind of like a fake person, right, and you have to determine whether this person is real or whether it's a computer, right? That's essentially what the Turing test boils down to. What I find is very interesting is that there's, even in our society, there's levels of communication that are just more intimate. We'll use that scale of intimacy, right? It's like a conversation with a clerk at a grocery store. There's a depth to that conversation that, quite honestly, if that was the framework and the paradigm for the Turing test, I could maybe be fooled, right? Now, a conversation between father and son or husband and wife, I guess it depends on your relationship. But I'm telling you, right, you think about what is the most intimate relationship that you have with another human being, and kind of use that as the center point and radiate out from that to say, that's where your Turing test should be. It's like, how does it get the fine nuances of nonverbal communication, and how does it Like, just you can't unravel that enigma.
So asking ChatGPT, does this make me look fat? Is that what you're suggesting, Dan?
Yeah. Well, okay. So interesting thing is what we, no. You got a good one for this.
But hang on. Before you, I just wanted to put this out here because ITSP Magazine Podcast Network gave us the answer. ChatGPT was trained using 10,000 of NVIDIA's graphics processing units clustered together in a supercomputer belonging to Microsoft. So,
and that's probably ChatGPT that gave that answer. So.
Yeah, exactly. But that's why I posted this out here, because maybe is ChatGPT trying to make itself look thin or look fat here? Who knows?
Looks big.
If ChatGPT gave this answer.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Anyway, go ahead.
It's probably agnostic, right? Go ahead, Marco.
Yeah. No, Daniel.
Is ChatGPT concerned about whether it looks fat or not?
I don't think so. But I will say, and now I'm cutting Marco off, but I will say the one different one is actually Elon. So much so that I've considered going to an X subscription because of his Grok AI.
Grok.
And he was recently accused of being too lefty, right? Because that's the whole thing about the criticism about ChatGPT is that, and seriously, I used ChatGPT to write a lot of the content for the cultural journalism show. And eventually it just became basically like a conversation between me and ChatGPT going, why is this so like politically correct? What is this voice? It's like I automatically take that opposite sort of not argumentative, but argument of what I'm hearing in the reflection of ChatGPT from that like leftist thing. That's what the criticism has been, is that the ChatGPT answers are too heavily left influenced. And so you'll see
this was an input from a while ago from one of our audience members. Ask ChatGPT how to steal an election. Well, if you start going there on some of these things, you will find ChatGPT to be very much politicized in its answers. It will be very partisan in its answers.
Yeah. I've had to almost not argue it, but you have to finesse it through a series of steps, right? You have to say, well, so then what is the argument that would, what is the argument against that position? And if you kind of massage it the right way, you can kind of get it to answer it. But that's why I think Elon was, back with an entourage of far right extremists. I think in the last couple of weeks, and he's like, I'm not going to be lefty here. I'm going to go all the way right, and we're hopefully going to end somewhere in the middle, or whatever, right? So, I don't know. What are your guys' Elon meters? What do you guys like that guy?
Antithesis, synthesis, right?
Marco, I cut you off there.
Well, no. That's cool. That's cool. But
let's look at this comment from Sharon, and then we'll go to Marco. Going back to the question we posed earlier, is it a net good or bad? Both a promise and a threat, reflecting the current development of humanity. The flaws, the promised, future usage as a tool which enhances the development of societies for their advancement. Definitely a more glass half full kind of answer, but with risk.
Yeah.
One thing I've been, damn, Marco. Okay, go ahead.
No, go. I'm fascinated.
As Tupac would say, all eyes on you.
Don't forget, I'm used to be a host, so I'm okay. I'm gonna let you talk.
I tried to move you in the spotlight, and Dan moved you back.
Yeah, I was moving you too at the same time, right?
I know.
No, I was going to jump on this, Daniel. Let me say this. You said that we do have, and it's true, an advantage to a computer that cannot see your expression yet, that cannot listen to the nuances of your voice yet, and learn out of that. I think that if it's really mimicking as it is, maybe the way, because we don't know how we think. We're not that into our own brain either. But if it's connecting the neuron of the artificial intelligence thinking, you give the vision and you give other senses, then the question is, would it really be as smart or intelligent as us? Or there is still something inside our brain that it goes way above it, like a sixth sense that we just cannot replicate. So, philosopher, please.
Well, I think it goes to the conversation that on free will, and I think that the determinists and I think maybe a large percentage of the scientific community that fall in line with the deterministic, non-free will kind of position. I just think they're getting the nuance of it. Like the argument is that there's no homunculi thing in there beyond the neurons when you shut it off, right? But when you deeply listen to what a religious person is coming from, is that there's a lineage of wisdom that's transferred for generation upon generation upon generation. And I know my mother recently passed away in the last couple of weeks. I never got to meet my mom until I was 22. And this type of thing happens with twin studies all over the planet. I never met my mom until my birth mother until I was 20 years old. She walks like I do. She has mannerisms like I do. That is not something that you can pick up through any kind of like learned behavior, right? This is something that is genetic within us. And so much so that just like reducing it to neural activity is fine. You're kind of right, but you're also prematurely dismissing the beauty that the religious community is trying to paint for you. They're trying to paint the picture and say, look at this, can't you see this? Mm-hmm. And it's almost like the scientific community is going, no, that's all there is. It's black and white and it's a bunch of zeros and ones. And it's like, guys, you're both wacky. you know, like you're both wacky. You're both missing the common beauty. There's no argument. There's no point for contention. The book that I didn't publish, I wrote on free will, was a bunch of people on a cover just talking past each other. It's a waste of an argument. To me, in my opinion, just in my nuanced opinion, it's just completely ridiculous.
Thank you, Dan. I'm going to segue into a slightly different direction based on some of the more recent comments, because this show is titled Created in the Image of God, and it is religious. So I want to address a couple of the comments that are coming in. Well, actually, one of the comments that's representative of people who are coming at this from a religious perspective. So just allow me to address this from a biblical perspective. Christ brings a sword, commented, clay will not mix with iron.
Max Headroom, that's so funny.
Right. So, this is the kind of comment that, people will dismiss, people will laugh at. I'm going to take it very seriously, and I'm going to try to share something that might be helpful. Obviously, what he is getting at is that artificial intelligence has a biological skin that is not human, and he actually has an interesting point that may bear some reflection. I'm going to quickly share my screen here and share with the audience who may not be familiar with this what he's talking about and where he's coming from. Now, I used my browser, my search engine. I do not use Google. I'm not going to say which one I do use. And I just quickly pulled up the image that he is referring to. This is Daniel's vision of 5 kingdoms. And this is a typical standard interpretation of this image. It had a head of gold. It had shoulders and arms and breast of silver. It had, midsection of bronze. It had legs of iron and clay. Or it had legs of iron, and then it had feet and toes of iron mixed with clay. And then the rock that was not cut out with human hands. Here it's referred to as Jesus. That's open for discussion. All of this is open for discussion. But the rock that was not cut out with human hands struck the image on its feet. And of course, the iron and clay didn't hold, and the whole image came tumbling down. So this is what he is referring to. I would simply call out that we could now talk for 3 hours, and maybe we'll just have a show on this prophetic image in Daniel and what it means and throughout history and how it's been interpreted. But for the sake of the discussion today, I'll just point out that it's interesting that the head is of gold, right? The head is of gold. Now, what it's saying is that civilization got progressively worse, right? Progressively mundane, or progressively flawed, less pure, less valuable, negative in any sense of the word. But still, it talks about it starting out as gold, right? And so there's a lot here to be unpacked. And so I want to thank Christ Brings a Sword for bringing this up. I want to use him as an example of bringing in topics that are constructive. Some of the other people, I'm not even going to show your comments, and I'm not even going to respond to you, because I don't think you're contributing anything that can even be responded to in this setting. In other words, there are some comments that are very negative about who we are and what we represent, which are being put out there by people who really have no clue who we are or what we represent. So anyway, I just thought I would go off on a tangent and at least address some of those comments that are in the chat. And I want to thank everybody for commenting and making it somewhat of a robust discussion this evening. We really do appreciate all of your comments. So as we wind down now, I'm going to go to one final commercial break while Dan and Marco and myself look through some of the comments, because when we come back, we're going to have to pick the one that is going to be awarded the book. So stay tuned if you've been patiently waiting to see whether or not you'll get a free copy of that 25 Servings of Soup Volume 1 that won the National Association of Book Entrepreneurs Award. We'll be right back after this message.
And welcome to Something or Other Publishing, or as our friends like to call us, Soup. Soup is a platform that connects authors, readers, and service providers in one convenient place. Choose Soup if you're an author with a great book idea and you're looking for a publisher offering hands-on coaching and some of the best royalties in the business. Or if you're a reader who enjoys engaging with celebrated and emerging authors. We already have over 3,000 of them, and more are joining every day. You can even win free books by voting on their book ideas. Or maybe you're a service provider and you're looking to engage with over 3,000 authors. We're here to help. So whether you're an author, a reader, or a service provider, you're in the right place at Soup. Contact us at help@soupllc.com to learn more.
And we've made a couple of we've showed a couple of promotions here for the various anthologies that you can get involved in. Let me quickly put this link up there. There's an annual short story contest with cash prizes that you can receive by submitting your short stories to Something or Other Publishing using this QR code. And thank you very much to our sponsors who make this show possible. And I hope you will consider visiting some of these and engaging with some of these opportunities. So we are now at the portion of the show where we decide who is going to be awarded. And Marco, you probably have the vote here. While you're still looking, I'm going to address one more comment. Christ Brings a Sword has continued to talk about Daniel's vision of 5 kingdoms, and he presents this interpretation. 1914 being the time when those feet and 10 toes were struck with that rock, the fall of the Ottoman Empire and the rise of Israel. There are some alternative views on that. I'll throw out one. You may or may not be aware that in 1844, the Ottoman Empire began issuing what was known as the Edicts of Toleration, which allowed Jews to return to the Holy Land and to Jerusalem and to begin purchasing land there. And so 1844 was also the year that William Miller had arrived at, initially 1843, then 1844, which led to the so-called Great Disappointment, when the specific prediction that he had made about Christ returning in the clouds and the rapture, I don't know if he called it the rapture happening, but people at that time were like waiting in the hills in 1844. So there are various views on this. I have my own views, which I'm not going to share tonight. I would just encourage those of you who are religiously inclined to look at the image of Daniel and some of these ideas, and maybe we will be covering them in future shows. We have talked about some of them on past shows. But tonight we're focused on AI, and is it the forbidden fruit? So Marco, are there any particular comments that you've been looking at here that you want to bring back to the fore and suggest? You might be on mute.
Yeah, that's me. So first of all, I think it's great that people are participating at the level that they are. So it's inspiring to carry the conversation going. I'm gonna go with Sharon because she's pretty much agreeing with kind of my line here. She's cautious.
Mirroring back.
She's cautious about that, but she has a positive outlook if we do the thing right, and I believe the same thing. I think it's a moment again of reflection, as we have spoken about during the conversation here, and it's an opportunity to reflect on ourselves, and if we do that, the technology, I think, can be really, really positive for the future of humanity. And for once, I'm not going to be the dystopian type of guy. So I'm going with her, and thank everybody for participating with the comments.
Awesome. So Sharon, congratulations. You've won tonight's giveaway. I'm going to put the email address for you to write in and claim your book by giving us your address to which we can mail it. And the book, again, is 25 Servings of Soup, Volume 1, which was award-winning. And we will be more than happy to send you that book as soon as you email info@soupllc.com to claim it. Daniel, do you concur or do you dispute Marco's decision here?
I don't, but I think if she doesn't claim the prize, I think there maybe should be a runner-up, and the runner-up.
Great idea.
Because I always like good questions, and so I think this guy was on the ball. He was asking really good questions in the show. I think this guy right here should get a copy of the book if Sharon doesn't get hers.
All right, it's ITSP info@soupllc.com. And I'm not gonna dispute that either. And I could issue even a third runner-up. But
the Max Headroom was classic. That, I just love that. That's the greatest.
Yeah, I will actually go with that. Christ brings a sword. We're gonna make you the runner-up for your many comments here, sort of presenting, perhaps the more negative side of it. But I won't at this time type again. It's info@soupllc.com. And you will be the third runner-up. So if the first two people don't claim, because we have actually had in recent weeks, some people who went to bed early, they may be on the East Coast, who knows, and may have missed that they won and didn't write in to claim their book. And it's sad if some of these prizes go unclaimed. So Christ brings a sword. third runner-up. So, and who knows? Nothing says we can't give all of you a book. So go ahead and write in and see what happens. Any last minute comments, Marco? We have probably talked as much as you, if not more. What words of wisdom or caution or encouragement would you leave our audience? And thank you in advance for being here tonight and discussing this topic with us.
Well, I am very excited to have this second chance, and I hope I didn't disappoint. I certainly had a good time with you. We talk about deep things, and I think we need to have an open mind, right? I mean, everybody is entitled of their position. That's what makes us human and different one from another. But I think that in order to judge, we need to kind of think it over and not just have a prejudice against technology, because I go back to that. Technology is human. It's an extension of who we are. I'm not going to go in the future of cyborgs, although that could be a great conversation for another night. But yeah, just be cautious and educate yourself when you use it. And I want to thank you guys, because just by thinking about the question that you raised, if technology is the forbidden fruit, it allows me to think it for the past few days, and I may actually end up writing a newsletter about it, because it's a good exercise for your mind. And thank you so much.
GPT or Bart to help you with that, or Grok?
I will not use Grok. I will not use Grok if it's being trained on Twitter. I don't want to know what they come out with. but Daniel, let me know about it.
It's not being trained on Twitter. It's being trained on X.
Yeah.
Oh, well, which okay. I'm not gonna open a can here.
I use to feed the bird.
I use ChatGPT, but I will never go with exactly what it spit out. So it will be my own collaboration. It will be human cognition and artificial intelligence collaboration.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. And this wasn't exactly the second coming, because you weren't here the first time. So we'll have to have you back for the second coming.
All right. I would love to.
Thank you so much. And Dan, thank you as always. And thank you to our wonderful audience. Please do like, subscribe, share. I have to tell you about who we have coming on next week. Next week, we have, we gave a couple of little digs here. I should say mean Mr. Dan at the beginning was kind of only slightly ribbing Marco for having not showed up the first time. And of course, I've carried on in that same spirit. But I think it was the week after that, or 2 weeks later during Thanksgiving week, where I had a brain freeze and forgot that it was Tuesday, because we were all thinking about Wednesday's turkey. And
Anne.
Exactly. And so Anne showed up, and we deplatformed her unintentionally. And now I'm having a hard time finding her. There we go. So next week, Anne K. Fraley will be here. She waited patiently in our lobby, and Dan was in Mexico, and I was all turkey-addled, and she didn't get to come on the show at all. But she graciously agreed to give it another try. Yeah. So next week, same time, same place, Anne K. Fraley, who is the author of many books. She's also successfully raised 8 children, and she will be here to delve into the depths of faith and courage, talking about her personal situation in which, and I want to get the facts right here, so I'm just going to read it. She lost her husband to a 4-year battle with leukemia, but she had 8 children. So as a widow mother, she discovered the enduring value in her roles while grappling with the realities of choices, free will, and the pursuit of noble and brave endeavors. Uncover the intricate interplay between the individual, the community, and the institutions in the context of a small town's revitalization efforts. Join us on this thought-provoking and inspiring road journey where the echoes of faith and resilience resonate against life challenges. Anne is an amazing woman who's written many books in the genre of science fiction and fantasy with spiritual and Christian themes woven in. Mm-hmm. But rather than a C.S. Lewis, she is a mother with these characteristics that I've just described to you. I cannot wait to have Anne on the show, and my apologies to her for last time. And we'll definitely be showing up here at this time. So be back 8 p.m. Central. Marco, thank you. Daniel, thank you. And to our audience, thank you. Please, God be with you over the course of the next week, and we will see you here next week. Bye now.